win tonight in the Breeders' Crown would move driver John Campbell past the $1 million mark in Crown earnings. He's got morning line favorite Express Ride to help him along. Bill O'Donnell, too, could go over the $1 million mark. He and Campbell, the most successful of the new breed of catch drivers, the driver specialists, are 1-2 in season's earnings. But they'll be challenged by the old breed, the trainer drivers, including Swede Hockenwallner, who's driving Royal Prestige, the best of his stable's 4 entries. John Simpson Jr., coming back from a terrible racing accident last year, is here with a good young trotter. He trains and drives the horse Long Look. Hall of Famer Stanley Dancer has a horse tonight. He has driven and trained some of the best trotters in history, including 4 winners of the Hambletonian. They and 5 others will compete for nearly $500,000 at the Meadows in Pennsylvania in the Breeders' Crown race for 2-year-old trotting colts. Welcome to the Meadows in Meadowlands, Pennsylvania. It's in the hills of western Pennsylvania. A clear and cool night the people at the Meadows are enjoying for the Breeders' Crown race for 2-year-old trotting colts. 10 fine young trotters in the field tonight. We're looking forward to a great race here. We're also going to be showing you during the evening today's Kentucky Futurity from the Red Mile in Lexington, a trotting classic, so a great evening of trotting here on ESPN. Hi, everybody. I'm Sharon Smith, along with Stan Bergstein of the Harness Tracks of America. And not only are we looking forward, Stan, to seeing some good trotting colts, but some of the great drivers in the world tonight.
Well, the best in the business are here for this race. They say that it all comes down to the Breeders' Crown. In the case of the 2-year-old trotters, it certainly is tonight. I think the season's champion will emerge from this race. And, of course, we have the great pair of Campbell and O'Donnell, who have been dominating harness racing's money winnings, each one winning over $7 million in purses this year. They're both here tonight.
And, of course, since we are seeing trotters, we do see these great trainers who love to drive their own trotters. We're seeing Stanley Dancer and others. That adds some excitement, too.
Well, historically and traditionally, the trainer and the driver used to be the same in harness racing, but that is one of the major changes in the last decade in the sport. And part of the reason is because of O'Donnell and Campbell, who have won over 1/3 this year, last year, of all the races raced at the Meadowlands, most of them with horses they did not train themselves.
Of course, nowadays, even a great trainer who can drive is perfectly willing to hire one of these good drivers should he need it. Of course, we saw Bill Houghton hire Bill O'Donnell to drive Nihilator, and we are seeing a little bit of that tonight as well. Bill O'Donnell's here, John Campbell is here, both of them coming in to drive horses trained by other people. Kenny Rice is paddock side for us tonight to talk to one of those great drivers.
Thank you, Sharon. In the late 1940s, a man came along and revolutionized the way that drivers approached races. His name's Stanley Dancer, and he believed in their aggressive style to take the lead early and wire-to-wire wins. In the late 70s, a pair of gentlemen came along and changed catch driving as we know it now. They've turned it into an art form. Bill O'Donnell and the man with me, John Campbell. John, tonight you're driving Express Ride, one of the favorites. Now, you've driven him twice last week in Lexington. On a catch drive like this, do you look a lot at past forms? Do you talk a lot to the trainers? How do you approach a race?
Oh, definitely. With a colt like this, he's a 2-year-old trotter, and you have to be fairly careful with him. I talked to George quite a bit before I raced him the other day, and I'll talk to him again before he races, and he knows him best. He's made the colt what he is.
Now, this colt has been impressive this season. Some talk about how he would go through the turns. How do you think he can handle the turns here tonight at the Meadows?
Well, I don't think they're going to be a great big help to him, but at the same time, I don't think they'll hinder him. I think he'll trot them okay, the same as he did at Lexington.
Now, you mentioned that you go over it a lot with George Schulte. Does it make a difference when you're with a 2-year-old like you have tonight, a trotter, say, compared to a 3-year-old or an aged horse?
Oh, definitely, and especially when they're trotters, more so than the pacers. The trotters have more idiosyncrasies, and you have to watch for them a little bit, and he'll let me know what he seems like and what he trained like this week.
Thank you very much, John. Good luck tonight. Man who's been in all these Breeders' Crowns, and he is driving one of the favorites tonight in Express Ride, going up against Bill O'Donnell. They have been 1-2 for the last 6 years, splitting the last 6 of the money-winning championships, and they are 1-2 again this season. Sharon?
Well, Kenny, there's another trend very apparent tonight, a trend in trotting, and that's the dominance. Well, we have to mention two stallions. There's Super Bowl. He does have two sons here tonight, but Speedy Crown, the great New York-based stallion, 5 sons and 2 grandsons. This is a dominant horse.
Well, he is to trotting what Meadows' skipper was to pacing. Speedy Crown has now dominated the sport, and his son, Speedy Somali, taking it up where he's left off. 5 of the horses in tonight's race, as you mentioned, are by Speedy Crown, but 2 others, Farm King and On the Take, are by Speedy Somali, who is his son. They were both dominant horses in their racing years, too.
Well, here are his 5 sons. Mangrove will be one of the favorites, and, of course, Royal Prestige as well. And Speedy Crown, a very handsome as well as fast horse, which is a good thing for the breed in general. So all of that is ahead, including the big race here on ESPN tonight, the Breeders' Crown Trot for 2-year-old colts. And the odds, perhaps, in the morning line, a little bit interesting. Now, the number 1 horses are an entry. You see SEURAT, LOBELL there listed as 2-1. Well, it's Express Ride's membership of that entry, really, that makes that group 2-1, because he is presumably the best horse in that group. Mangrove will get a lot of support. Stanley Dancer thought earlier in the year that this was among the best trotters that he had ever had, and he really still is.
He was right.
He's still very, very good, certainly. Among the other choices, well, some of them are long shots. The On the Take, which Bill O'Donnell has, is a little bit of a long shot, but he'll get some support, of course, because Bill O'Donnell is there. Royal Prestige, you see there at 3-1. Perhaps coming out of the second tier, otherwise he would have been the morning line favorite, don't you think?
Well, I would think so, and I'm not sure that the second tier is going to bother him all that much. A surprise in the morning line, or in the betting, is 12-1 on Long Legend, who looked pretty good and is coming on. He's a horse that is improving, and I would think that that's a rather attractive price on him. First column, of course, are the post positions.
Well, that is it. That is the trot for 2-year-old colts and geldings, the 3rd race in the 1985 Breeders' Crown Series. The Breeders' Crown on... Welcome back to the Meadows, where the 2-year-old colt and gelding trot in the Breeders' Crown Series is still ahead. And, of course, we're seeing in this race, something that we see in all major trotting races, really, in this country these days, and it's the enormous influence of Swedish owners, trainers, and drivers. I was at DuQuoin this summer and saw something like a 6-horse entry of Swedish horses going out.
It wouldn't hurt to learn Swedish if you're going to follow trotting. And it all goes back to 3 brothers. Gusta, Gunnar, and Soren Nordin, who came out of Sweden many, many years ago. Soren is the only one living. He's here now. But Bernt Lindstedt, one of the trainers and drivers in tonight's race, learned his racing under Gusta. Håkan Wallner, another one, of course, the head of the Continental Stable, learned his under the brother Gunnar. And Per Eriksson, who won this year's Hambletonian, learned his under Soren Nordin, as well as Jan Nordin did. Jan Jansson, who was the 4th member of that big group, didn't learn from the Gunnar brothers, from the Nordin brothers, but came from Forsa in Sweden, the same town where they did. So it's a dynasty.
Oh, indeed it is. They're very creative and inventive in their training of horses. They don't give all the credit to themselves. Here's Kenny Rice with one of the members of this Swedish connection. Let's go to Kenny.
The stake record by Flak Bates.
10 years ago, Continental Farm began this Swedish influence on trotting here in the United States. The man leading the way was Håkan Wallner. Joining him is a man with me now, John Johnson, and also Bernt Lindstedt. And John, it has been phenomenal, the success that you have had with trotters here in the States in the last 10 years. You believe in training them hard, training them early. It has revolutionized the way that North Americans have looked at the sport. What do you think has been the key for your success here?
I think we have good support from our owners to buy good bred horses, first of all, and we've been very lucky to have some good horses. And overseas, we can only have trotters, so we have to make all the trotters trot. Like here, you know, trotter won't trot that good, you can always put them on the pace, so that maybe that's an advantage we have over there. You know, we have to try with everything.
And tonight you have 4 in this race. You're going to be driving Farm King. How does he look?
Yeah, he was sick out in DuQuoin about a month ago, and he only had 1 race from that, and he ran a little short in Lexington last week. He turned 59 in a piece. But if he gets a good trip, he might get a check.
The one getting the most attention, though, of those that you have been training is Royal Prestige, driven by Håkan Wallner tonight. He is coming out of the 2nd tier, but that isn't too bad with 10 horses tonight.
No, I don't think so. It's better than 8 and 9 on this track here because it's so way out there, and Håk can always make a choice. You don't have to follow the one horse if he doesn't want. And there's a lot of speed up front there, so I think he's going to get away good.
You ever have trouble keeping up with all the horses you got in the races?
Sometimes.
Thank you very much, John. Good luck tonight. John Johnson's had a lot of experience with that. He has 4 in tonight's race, and that is not uncommon for he and for Continental Farms. Sharon?
Thanks, Kenny. Is he being a little too modest?
Yeah, modesty is one of their qualities, but he mentions the owners buy them. They pick them out, however. That's what makes the difference.
Which is the real burden, really. Well, it is a good group of horses that they've got. They do have what will probably be the favored entry in the Breeders' Crown Trot for 2-year-old colts. But the Kentucky Futurity is just ahead here on ESPN. We'll be right back.
Since 1940.
And welcome back to the Meadows in Western Pennsylvania for the third race in the 1985 Breeders' Crown Series. We've had 2 races. The first was won by the favorite. Sandy Bowl was the winner. Last week, though, on the road again, was the favorite. At the time, was the richest pacer in the history of standardbred racing, and he lost. A rough trip for him, though.
Well, it was a rough trip. It was a rough gated trip. But one of the things that happened was that the horse apparently saw something. Buddy Gilmore didn't, but on the road again apparently did, and tried to jump over it. When he did, he broke stride momentarily. He came back onto stride. And when that happened, he got rough from there, and Gilmore could not determine what it was. He still doesn't know what it was. But we'll show you there. Here's on the road again, and watch what happens here as he comes around the turn. And he tried to leap over something. Now Gilmore looks down on both sides of the bike, trying to see if it was equipment. He looks on one side, looks on the other side, can't see anything, and never did determine that it was equipment. But the horse got rough-gated again during the course of the mile, and it might just be wear and tear. He has been racing constantly, week after week, since March, and they're not machines, and he apparently might be getting to show just a little bit of the strain and stress of the campaign.
Of course, one of the problems is he did it at a very inappropriate time, as he's in a battle for Harness Horse of the Year. Also, last week, Practice lost a couple of races. He was another contender, didn't go in the Kentucky Futurity today. In the meantime, Nihilator last week paced the fastest mile in the history, racing mile in the history of the Red Mile. Today, went a 5th faster at the Red Mile, so he's really on top, isn't he?
Well, he's rolling now, and of course now he's doing what he should be doing, which is racing horses and beating them. He's adding to his reputation and luster, and as you say, it comes at a time when his opposition is going the other direction. So Nihilator is piling up points in the poll.
Indeed he is. He's earning himself some money and getting some fast times, too, if fast times are what they're looking for.
Great horse, no question about it. And the fact that he doesn't go to, if he doesn't get to beat the time trial record of his sire, Nihilator, won't make a bit of difference. He's still a great horse.
And we get to see him at the end of November in the final race of the Breeders' Crown Series for 3-year-old colt and gelding pacers. Now, we mentioned earlier the Kentucky Futurity. It is the 3rd leg of the trotting Triple Crown. This is the big week at the Red Mile in Lexington. Practice was not in the race. He has a little bit of sickness. He did race last week. He lost. He wasn't there, but it was still a good field of 3-year-old trotters, mostly colts. There was one filly, and in fact, in elimination number 1, it was the filly who came out on top. Armbro Devona was the winner of elimination number 1, of heat number 1 of the Kentucky Futurity race today at the Red Mile in Lexington. Let's look at the stretch run of Armbro Devona, and she was pretty quick, 57-1.
There's a real test. The Kentucky Futurity at the end of the year usually is a race where fillies come to dominate if they're going to dominate. Very difficult for fillies to win against males, even in trotting, but it happens more often, and Armbro Devona stamped herself today with class.
She really did. Now, again, the field divided into 2 divisions, so heat number 1 divided up. The other group of horses, really, were in Division 2 of heat number 1. Probably the stronger group, I think we would have to say, and it certainly produced an outstanding time. Let's take a look at the stretch of that race now. Flak are involved in this one.
Well, starting in mid-season last year when he was a 2-year-old, Flackbait began to draw comment from his trainer and driver, Ben Webster. He said, I've got a top one. He may be one of the best 3-year-olds next year. It's taken him a long time to prove it, but here he is proving it today.
And he went in 55-2, which was the fastest heat ever of the Kentucky Futurity. The way it works is the top finishers in each of those 2 eliminations come back for the second heat. If either of the first 2 winners wins again, it's all over. Otherwise, they have a race-off. Well, that's what happened. The second heat went to the horse that a lot of people probably thought was going to win the whole thing going in. So they, I guess we're not surprised when Nearly Perfect came out on top in the second heat of the Kentucky Futurity today. Again, a very fast time for this horse.
He is back in form again. This horse was good early, then got off. But he is back now in peak form, and he showed it here again in this heat as he trots home in 1:55-2.
Okay, so it was Nearly Perfect joining Armbro Devona and Flackbait in the race-off. See, a horse has to win twice, and it's a rough afternoon for these horses, but indeed one did. So 3 horses into the final, or the race-off. Nearly Perfect was the favorite at 3-5. Of course, the fans there remembering what he had done the previous week to practice. Flackbait at 8-5. Armbro Devona at 5-2. Of course, there's no real long shot in a field of 3 really good trotters. So that is it. Let us take a look now at the race-off of the Kentucky Futurity for 1985. Nearly perfect Flak bait, Armbro Devona. Carl Becker has the call.
Here they come. They're off and trotting between horses. Flak bait first away on the inside. Nearly perfect will be away second, and the filly drops over third. Armbro Devona trails as that field rolls around the lower turn now, trotting toward the quarter-mile mark. And Flak bait will dictate fractions. He leads for Benny Webster by a length and a half. On the inside, racing second, Nearly Perfect with Mickey McNichol, and at the back, Armbro Devona as they leisurely trot around the turn toward the quarter-mile mark. O'Donnell guiding the filly third as they reach the quarter station. With the lead, Flak bait by a length and a half. They're at the quarter, trotting past that mark, 30 and 2. They're on the backstretch. Waiting second down the backside, Nearly Perfect. Armbro Devona content along the rail third as they trot toward the half-mile mark. The speedy Somali 3-year-old Flak bait in command for Benny Webster by a length and a half. Waiting second still, Nearly Perfect, the Song Can 3-year-old, and at the back, the speedy Crown filly Armbro Devona as they approach the half-mile mark. With the lead, Flak bait. Second still at the half, Nearly Perfect, and third, Armbro Devona. No move as they race past that mark. They're at the half in a minute 4/5. Both the first and second quarters trotted in 30 and 2/5. And now they're in the third quarter. They're trotting toward the draw gate with the lead by a length still, Flak bait. Yet to move from second is Nearly Perfect. Armbro Devona waits third as they roll around the final turn. Trotting with the lead, Flak bait, waiting Nearly Perfect and Armbro Devona. And now they're trotting quicker as they approach the three quarters. They're past the draw gate and Flak bait leads, and here he comes. Nearly Perfect flushing to the outside. Armbro Devona yet to move from third. They're at the three quarters, 1:32 and 4. They're in the final quarter mile. Kentucky Futurity 3-year-olds turn for home. On the outside, racing up now, Nearly Perfect. On the inside, trying to fight him off is Flak bait, and now the filly joins them. She's 3 wide in the lane. On the inside, Flak bait, and Flak bait very strong in the stretch. On the outside, Nearly Perfect coming at him. Flak bait, Nearly Perfect, Armbro Devona to the wire. Flak bait is going to win the Kentucky Futurity. 1:59.3, it's Flak bait. And Benny Webster, judges have called for a photo between Flak bait and Nearly Perfect.
And Flak bait got it. Nearly Perfect second, Armbro Devona third. All three distinguished him or herself in the Kentucky Futurity race-off today. Well, the Breeders' year-old trot is ahead, but up next we are going to visit Delvin Miller in Pennsylvania. There's no one more associated with horse racing in western Pennsylvania than the man who lives on this farm just a few miles from the track. It's Delvin Miller, and you can't think of the Meadows without thinking of Delvin and of Adios, the great pacing stallion who bought to stand at his farm.
His dam was a world champion. His great-granddam was a world champion. And there was some breeding in the background there I liked real well. It not only made the farm, it made Meadowlands, Pennsylvania. And it made the racetrack, really.
Adios has been gone for 20 years now, but Delvin Miller still stands good stallions. This is Arndon. He is especially welcome because he is a fast and handsome trotter.
I do like the trotter. They're you have to balance them. You have to make a trotter. You can just put hobbles on a pacer and hit them on the butt and go on with them. But trotters are, and they're like a good golfer. You know, you've got a good swinger. Baseball pitchers can throw it good, and trotter that way. They've got to have you don't see a bad gator trotter winning big races. They're well balanced and carry their heads right, and they're a little prouder looking even to me than a pacer, although any pacer that's winning is, you know, they're proud looking.
Delvin remembers his good trotters most fondly. Delmonica Hanover was a special favorite of his. Harness racing has changed over the years, but he thinks not entirely for the better.
I don't think it's quite the sport it was when I started out in. You know, it's more of a business now. It was always a business, but it's more of a business now. You know, we used to go through, like we'd go to the Grand Circuit at Springfield and DuQuoin, Sedalia, Missouri, Milwaukee. We'd all stay there the whole week. You know, you were chummy and friendly, and the owners would go out there and say, now it's all, can you set that race up quicker so I'd fly back and race this horse and that? I think it's really a business now.
Delvin is 72 years old now, but he still trains and intends to return to driving once he recovers from back surgery he underwent this year.
I still, I like to drive home because that's the only thrill I get of maybe something I've bred or something and drive her on, I still like it, and I still feel like I can compete with them. When I feel I can, if I get to shake it, I said that'll be my last time in driving.
Tell you, every sport could use a Delvin Miller.
He is one of the greatest men in any sport. He is a sports worshiper, a hero worshiper of other people, and doesn't realize what a hero he is. He's done everything in this sport. He's been a trainer, been a driver. He founded this racetrack, the Meadows, of course, been a breeder, a great breeder, was responsible for the career of Adios. Superman and a super gentleman.
And he's so enthusiastic. We were talking today about Arndon, whose first foals to reach the racetrack next year, and he says, boy, how could you even think of retiring when you've got Arndons coming up? And he wouldn't think in a million years of that, in spite of the fact that he did have some back surgery this year. Very enthusiastic.
He had the back surgery recently and is back getting into action. He has raced in 45 different countries around the world. And wherever you go, where there's a harness horse, they know the name Delvin Miller for good cause.
Of course, he's here tonight, and he'll be watching enthusiastically as these young trotting colts and geldings compete for the Breeders' Crown. Again, the entry that includes Express Ride is the morning line favorite for the Breeders' Crown race for 2-year-old trotting colts and geldings. Royal Prestige, probably as well bred as a horse could possibly be, is likely to be the second choice. And that is all ahead here on ESPN. We'll be updating the odds for you as they come in. And, of course, we will show you the race as these colts compete for nearly $500,000 in the Breeders' Crown race just ahead.
Sandy Bowl, sired by Hanover Shoe Farms, trots to a new world record. 1985's Hanover Shoe Farms yearlings are selling October 27th and 28th in Harrisburg at the Pennsylvania State Farm Show Arena. See them exercise daily at Hanover Fairgrounds. Their potential is unlimited because Hanover Shoe Farms has bred more champions than any other standard bred farm. Tomorrow's champions are at Hanover Shoe Farms.
Look how water can
We're back at the Meadows in Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania, for the third race in the 1985 Breeders' Crown Series. I'm Sharon Smith, along with Stan Bergstein and Kenny Rice, and we are going to see a field of 10 2-year-old trotting colts. And, in fact, the post parade is just about ready to start for these good young colts. Again, we've got an entry, so you're going to have to look at the 1, the 1A, the 1B, and keep them straight. Of course, if you were here at the track and got to bet on them, you'd get 3 good horses for the price of 1. It's a good field of trotting colts. Although there hasn't been a real dominant horse emerge, they are good. First of all, SEURAT LOBELL. This is a Speedy Crown colt owned by Hanley Dawson, Ulf Molberg, and Hugh Grant. And the driver tonight, Tom Houghton, replacing Buddy Gilmore. SEURAT LOBELL, the #1 horse, leading the post parade tonight for the Breeders' Crown race for 2-year-old trotting colts. The 1A is the reason why this entry was listed in the morning line at 2-1. This is Express Ride. John Campbell in to drive this colt. Castleton Farm, William Simon, yes, former Secretary of the Treasury, and Hanley Dawson, the owners of this colt. And he was a $140,000 yearling, and that is how he raced. In fact, he's raced like a little bit more of a high-priced colt than that, a Super Bowl colt. Number 1B, the final horse in this entry, is Salem Lobell, another Speedy Crown colt. Hanley Dawson and Ulf Molberg, the owners of this colt. And we've got Bern Lindstedt driving this one. He comes out of Continental Farm Stable. He's a $40,000 yearling. He is part of the entry, which is certainly getting a lot of interest tonight. Salem Lobell, the number 1B in the post parade tonight. This is Stanley Dancer, the great Stanley Dancer, and Mangrove. This is his Speedy Crown colt that he is so enthusiastic about. He is partial owner of it, as is Clearview Sable. Several of his longtime patrons are together on this colt, and it's a good partnership. And Stanley, of course, is thrilled to be driving this colt. He, of course, had the great colt Dancer's Crown a couple of years ago. I'm not sure whether this colt is quite as good, but he's not far behind if he isn't. This is Mangrove, a Speedy Crown colt. The number 3 entry is Farm King, a Speedy Somali colt, which is owned by Kurt Burtmark of Florida. This one is Jan Janssen driven, Continental Farm Stable. Again, another of the Swedish-trained horses. Farm King, a son of Speedy Somali, a son of Speedy Crown. Of course, it is nighttime, so it's a little bit dark on the track. Continuing on with the horses in our post parade, that was the number 3 Farm King. Let us take a look at, well, let's continue looking a little bit long. Well, this is number 5. We can go on to him. This is Long Legend. We will take a look at Long Legend here on the track. Long Legend is trained and driven by John Simpson Jr. Had a terrible accident here at the Meadows last year, and people who are his friends and even just fans were terrified of the possibilities. He has recovered. He is driving again, driving well, and he is out here tonight with Long Legend. This is a Super Bowl colt owned by John Gaines and Nelson Bunker Hunt. The number 6 horse is Predominant. This is another Speedy Crown colt owned by Richard Staley of California. He was bred by Castleton Farm, $130,000 yearling. This colt is trained and driven by Doug Ackerman. He's got 4 wins in his brief racing career. That is Predominant. Now, continuing on, this is the number 7 horse, TORY Sweep. This is owned by David Weldon of Ontario. In fact, there's a homebred colt by Florida Pro. Bill Wellwood is the trainer and driver of this colt. He's got 5 wins in his 12 starts. He's a consistent young colt, this TORY Sweep by Florida Pro. Now, Royal Prestige is, he certainly deserves his name. He's sired by Speedy Crown out of the great race mare Rosemary by Neville Pride. He was bred to be a great horse, and he really is turning out to be. The Workaholics, too. Some of the same people that owned Workaholic are involved in the ownership of this colt, and Håkan Wallner has chosen to drive this one. He cost $225,000 as a yearling. Certainly is worth it, even though that's an awful lot of money. That is Royal Prestige, number 8, in tonight's race for 2-year-old trotting colt. So we have seen a good bunch of young horses. Also in the field on the take, Bill O'Donnell, the driver, coming out of Quebec. Caval Enterprises owns him. He's a Speedy Somali colt. So that is a look at the field for the Breeders' Crown race for 2-year-old trotting colts. And I know, Stan, you've seen some that you like a lot.
Well, I like the whole field. I'd like to have any one of them in the field. But the one, of course, that's won the most money in here is Express Ride. He has won $602,000 so far, and here you see him beating Long Legend at Lexington a week ago. This colt's won $602,000, and if he wins a check tonight, which means if he finishes in the first 5, because they all get money, he will become the richest 2-year-old trotter ever. That title right now goes to another miracle who's won $607,000. And there you see John Campbell, who is driving Express Ride. George Scholey is the trainer, but Campbell took over last week, driving him, and is back again to this evening in the sulky. The next horse up is the horse that horsemen think might be the best 2-year-old of the entire group. This is Royal Prestige coming up, and he will be driven by Håkan Wallner, who is the man that has started in the last decade the Swedish invasion of the United States. In 1974, he began going very, very strong, and since then, his Continental stable has been dominant. There you see Wallner and Royal Prestige. He has post position 10, which means he starts in the 2nd tier. He's won $144,000 this year. He has won his last 4 starts, and he beat Express Ride last week at Lexington in a very close finish by a neck. He'll have to come out of that 2nd tier. He'll follow Mangrove out, who is a very, very fast horse. And we'll take a look at Mangrove. He is Stanley Dancer's hopeful in the race. This is Wallner, and here is Mangrove showing his form for Dancer on the outside. You see him closing on the outside during the long stretch at Lexington. This is a colt who is out of a mare called Thicket. She was a half-sister to Conifer, who won a Breeders' Crown filly stake last year. Dancer developed 8 different trotters that sold for $1 million or more, which isn't bad for a 4-H boy who comes up from the farm, and that's the way all 4-H boys should do it. But here he is with Mangrove, and he hopes to add to the total tonight. Then you get Predominant, who is the next horse in Long Legend. We should take a look at Long Legend. There's Dancer with Mangrove scoring down just before the start here tonight. He is ready, and he is in post position 2. And when he goes out of there, you'll see early speed. This colt has a lot of early speed, and I imagine he'll be in front. Here's John Simpson Jr. with Long Legend. This horse is a closer, and Simpson knows this track. This is where he was injured in that accident that Sharon mentioned. Long Legend is a stretch driver, and look for him in the lane here tonight coming home. With the early pace that Mangrove will set, and probably Royal Prestige, Long Legend will have to come off the pace, but he can do it, and he can do it very well.
Well, that is a look at some of the outstanding horses, probably the ones that are going to be favorites. Now, let's see what the bettors have been doing so far. Well, the entry, now, SEURAT LOBELL, strictly speaking, is not the favorite. It's the entry, including Express Ride, is the favorite, with Royal Prestige not far behind, Mangrove getting considerable support tonight. That's a look at the current odds. We'll be back in just a minute.
Since 1940.
Go, Sharon.
We're back at the Meadows in Meadowlands, Pennsylvania, where the 2-year-old Trot is just ahead in the Breeders' Crown Series. Bill O'Donnell in to drive, one of the great drivers in the world. He's driving On the Take. This is the speedy Somali colt out of Canada. Lacaval Enterprises owns him, and Bill O'Donnell is in town to drive this for Jean-Paul Gaultier, who is the trainer of this colt. And I'm sure Gaultier is very happy to have a driver of O'Donnell's caliber here. Now, the horses are getting ready to move behind the gate because the start is pretty close. Let's get on to Kenny, who is trackside. Kenny?
Thanks, Sharon. You and Stan have been talking about the favorites. A couple of interesting bets here. May not win it, but could get up in the money, and you certainly have to like the odds on Predominant at 35-1. And also Long Legend is now at 9-1, getting ready to go off. And Long Legend looked pretty good in Lexington last week. Could finish in the money tonight. Sharon?
And thank you, Kenny. Stan, any thoughts on a strategy that we're going to see real quickly?
Well, I would think that you see Stanley Dancer go out with Mangrove, and Royal Prestige, who's in the second tier, can follow anybody he wants out of there in Pennsylvania. And I'm pretty sure that Håkan Wallner will choose to follow Stanley Dancer out, hopefully to get position. And as I mentioned, Long Legend will have to come off the pace.
Okay, the 2-year-old colts are lining up behind the gate. The drivers trying to get their noses up to the gate. Our track announcer here at the Meadows is Roger Houston. As these colts go around the first turn, getting ready for the start, let's send it to Roger right now. Roger?
Trotters are all moving in behind the gate. From the rail out, SEURAT LOBELL, Mangrove, Farm King, On the Take, Express Ride, Long Legend, Salem LOBELL, Predominant, TORY Sweep, the trailer Royal Prestige. The gate swings around the turn, and there they go for the Breeders' Crown. Here off and trotting, Mangrove goes right out from behind the gate. On the outside, Predominant. Down along the rail, SEURAT LOBELL. Between horses, On the Take is fourth. Fifth on the outside, Express Ride. Off stride, Predominant, Mangrove. As they race around the turn, stacking up the field, going to the quarter. Off stride at the rail, SEURAT LOBELL. Coming through between horses, Royal Prestige to get the lead. Racing second on the outside, past the quarter in 30 seconds flat. On the outside, now second, it's Express Ride. Racing down along the rail, third, Farm King. Trotting fourth at the rail, at the 3/8 mark, Salem LOBELL. Racing fifth, TORY Sweep. On the Take, sixth. Predominant is seventh, Long Legend eighth. Mangrove ninth. Treading the field, SEURAT LOBELL. As they race around the clubhouse turn, going to the halfway point, it's Royal Prestige with the lead. Past the half, 101, 2/5. Express Ride second. Racing third, Farm King. Fourth at the rail. Down the backside, Salem LOBELL. Here comes Express Ride on the move on the outside. Going after leader, Royal Prestige. Moving up at the rail, Farm King, a close third. Racing fourth, into the turn, Salem LOBELL. Fifth at the rail, TORY Sweep. 3/4 mark, 3/4, 1:31 and 2. Backside, 30 seconds flat. But around the final turn, Royal Prestige leads the way. Express Ride on the outside. Along the rail, Farm King. Coming for the payoff. Royal Prestige is off stride. Farm King now has the lead. Back on the outside, Express Ride. It's Express Ride on the outside. Farm King second. Express Ride wins the Breeders' Crown. Going to the wire, it's 1A.
Very much, Roger. And I guess everything broke exactly right for Express Ride, and I didn't mean broke as a joke.
Well, it's a pun, and it's a very appropriate one, because, of course, when Royal Prestige went off stride at the head of the stretch, Express Ride was right there to take advantage of it. And that is one of the great strengths of John Campbell's driving wizardry. He is hardly ever out of position, and he did a very good job piloting this colt around the turns. There was a question among horsemen's minds as to whether he could handle the turns or not. He has been doing virtually all of his racing on mile tracks, and that's where he established his dominance. First, of course, at the Meadowlands on the mile track there, and then at Lexington. We'll take a look at the action, and you'll see what happened. Farm King, who was on the inside and had the lead very briefly, could not hold the lead because he simply could not hold off Express Ride. So we will see here, you see Royal Prestige going off stride. Farm King down along the inside. 3 of the first 4 drivers at that point were the Swedes. But here comes Campbell carrying the flag. He's a Canadian, of course, but here in the United States. And he scores with Express Ride in the mile in 2:01 3/5. Here's another look here as you can see them coming into the stretch, Sharon. And right at that point, as they hit the turn, Huckenwallner is in trouble as Royal Prestige, who had won 4 in a row, goes off stride. Under the rules of trotting, he must get him outside where clearance exists and take hold and restrain him, which he's done. Farm King on the inside, but simply cannot hold off the on-rushing Express Ride, who tonight establishes himself as the king of the 2-year-old trotters and as the richest 2-year-old trotter in the history of the sport.
Royal Prestige, though, is certainly a horse to watch for next year. You notice how quickly he got back out on stride, and he got himself a piece of that purse. So it was not a completely wasted trip, although I explained that to Huckenwallner right now. He probably doesn't want to hear it. So here is the leader of the division. Next year, well, we might look at some of these other colts as well. So Express Ride, the champion so far of the 3-year-old or 2-year-old trotting colts. Back in a minute. Back at the Meadows, where we have seen Express Ride win the Breeders' Crown race for 2-year-old trotting colts and geldings. I think they were all colts here tonight, so we'll call it for 2-year-old trotting colts. He was a dominant winner in the stretch once his primary rival, Royal Prestige, went off stride. So Express Ride, John Campbell, the winning driver, and there are the happy folks in the winner's circle, along with their horse, Express Ride. So he is the winner. After losing last week to Royal Prestige, he's turned the tables and beaten his rival. So that's a good colt, isn't it?
The happy man, the little man in the gray sport coat coming around the sulky right now, and who ran out and embraced John Campbell as he'd returned, is George Schulte, who developed this colt, trained him, and drove him up until last week. Last week, he took himself down at Lexington in memory of his very close friend and associate, Glenn Garnsey, who was lost to the sport. Did not drive last week, had Campbell come back this week and took over.
Well, it certainly worked out well for all of them. Kenny Rice is with John Campbell just outside the winner's circle. Let's get on to Kenny right now. Kenny?
Thanks, Sharon. John Campbell, congratulations. You said a little driving luck tonight, and that never hurts, huh?
That's for sure. It went our way tonight.
Now, right at the start, some problems with Express Ride just momentarily as we take a look at it on the replay.
In the first turn, there was a lot of traffic. A couple of horses made breaks, and he got rough. He run about 2 steps, and he came right back trotting, which is very unusual for a 2-year-old.
And that was one of the concerns, right, about these turns and how well he'd be able to negotiate them tonight.
Yeah, it wasn't so much the turns, it's just the traffic. Got a little jammed up, and surprised me. He just come right back trotting.
Overall, your assessment of his performance tonight?
Well, he raced real game. He was taking a pretty good hold of me going to the half, so I took him out. My main concern was to keep him trotting, and we were fortunate enough that the horse in front made a break, and he went on and won.
You had him outside. Did you feel that you had him in a nice enough spot, setting everything up when you came for that stretch drive, John?
Well, I think the horse that was in front of Huckenwallner's would have been too tough for us to beat if he hadn't gone off stride.
How good is this? This is the third time now, right? 2 times last week in Lexington that you've driven Express Ride. Now tonight's the 3rd time.
Yeah, he's a real game trotter. It's very unusual for a 2-year-old to make a break like that in the first turn and come back trotting. And he wants to race. He's got a real competitive attitude.
Thanks very much. Congratulations, John Campbell.
Thank you very much, Kenny.
Always good seeing you in the winner's circle. It seems like you're here a lot now, and you've gone over the $1 million mark. John Campbell in career earnings just in this short Breeders' Crown Series in the 2 years it's been on now. And also the richest 2-year-old trotter is Express Ride, and they're having a celebration down here in the winner's circle. Sharon?
And thank you, Kenny. So that is the winner, Express Ride, with Farm King getting in second. Farm King driven by Jan Janssen. And another of the entries, Salem Lobell, finishing third. 2:01 3, not a record, but an impressive victory for Express Ride in the 2-year-old colt and gelding trot in the Breeders' Crown Series. We'll be back with more after a short timeout.
19.
Express Ride is the winner of the Breeders' Crown Trot for 2-year-old colts and geldings. He was a $140,000 yearling. He's worth considerably more than that right now. Castleton Farm, part owner of this horse, William Simon, the former Secretary of the Treasury, along with Henley Dawson Jr. It's a happy group of owners. They are receiving their trophy right now. Let's go down to Delvin Miller, who's going to handle the trophy presentations.
John, on behalf of the, am I live? Behalf of the Meadows and Ed Ryan and Joe Hardy, it's a pleasure to present this trophy to Castle and Farm, Hanley Dawson, Bill Simon, and congratulations to George Sholey for training the horse so great, and for John Campbell for driving a great race.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Miller. Congratulations, Mr. Dawson.
Thank you very much.
And as John Campbell pointed out a minute ago, it's a real gutsy performance tonight. He had a little trouble there at the start, but came right back and trotted well.
He sure did. He just did a great job driving our horse for us. And we're very pleased, and we're very pleased at the way George Sholey has trained this horse right from the time that we had him.
Mr. Hanley Dawson, one of the owners, Mr. John Cashman, representing Castleton Farm. I know that Mr. Fred Van Lennep is home in Lexington watching tonight.
Yes, he is, and I'm sure he enjoyed the show great, and the win more than anything else. And Mr. Simon was in California watching the show also. So it's another Breeders' Crown for Castleton, Dawson, and Simon combination, and George Schulte, trainer of both of them, and driver of one, and John Campbell, driver of the other. Couldn't be a greater night.
It's hard to go against all those elements. You got a lot working for you there, and an impressive performance tonight. Had some problems, but Express Ride came back and trotted well.
Yes, Express Ride's got an attitude that he wants to win. He has the desire, and he'll overcome a lot of other problems to get that job done. That's just what he had to do tonight, and that's what he did.
Of course, you've seen a lot of champions over the years at Castleton Farm. How does he stand with some of the good trotters? You've seen some of the young trotters.
Well, he certainly has all the ingredients of the other great trotters at Castleton of his own, and he's displayed that. He's won, I think, in excess of $850,000 now. He's never been worse than third, and he trotted in 57 and 4 in the end of July in a race. He trotted that fast last week, and he overcame all kinds of road trouble tonight, and only his second time on anything smaller than a mile track, and I think that's quite of an accomplishment for a young 2-year-old trotter.
And another thing that we've always talked about in this series, Mr. Dawson, it's always good to have a matchup of champions. You had a good one tonight in Royal Prestige against Express Ride.
We sure did. And we congratulate Håkan Wallner on a great job that he did.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Mr. Cashman from Castleton Farm. Mr. Dawson, congratulations again. George Schulte.
Thank you.
Congratulations, George. He warmed up real well tonight, I know you said.
Yeah, Johnny, I warmed him up the first heat for Johnny, and he said when he was fine when I went with him, and I asked him how he was when he come in with him, and he said he seemed like he was better than he was last week. So he's an easy colt to train. He's like Mr. Cashman said, he's got a great attitude on him, and he wants to do right. So it's just a pleasure to work with young animals like that.
Thank you very much, George. Congratulations again. It has been a happy night for a lot of people here who are associated with champions, and they certainly have another one in Express Ride. Sharon?
Thank you, Kenny. You know, Stan, one of the great things about seeing 2-year-olds is looking forward to next year. You know, not that being a great 2-year-old isn't an accomplishment in itself, but we like to look at Hambletonian. Did we see a Hambletonian winner here, maybe?
Well, this colt certainly looks like he has the ability to go on and all of the qualities, as John Cashman said, but there has not been total correlation in recent years between 2-year-old form and 3-year-old form. These colts race hard at 2. Some of them come back, some of them don't. There's some attrition because of physical maladies and injuries, and others just lose the edge, and some that were not yet quite that precocious at 2 develop their maturity at 3 and come on. So it's a very difficult task, and getting more difficult each year to project how the 2-year-olds are going to race at 3. But I think you'll see a number of these horses, particularly Royal Prestige and Express Ride, back battling again next year, and it'll be worth waiting for.
Well, it certainly happened in the 2-year-old pacing colts, at least with one of them last year, came back pretty good as a 3-year-old. So that is a look at the, you saw the odds or the payoffs really there for the first 3 finishers. And there is Express Ride as we see him trotting to his victory in the Breeders' Crown race for 2-year-old colt and gelding trotters. He is a very rich young horse right now.
The bluegrass of...
Welcome back to the Meadows in Pennsylvania, where it's just about time for some final comments on what we saw in the Breeders' Crown race for 2-year-old trotters tonight. Let's go down to Kenny, who is trackside. Kenny?
Thank you, Sharon. We had some horses of interest tonight, and as far as they went off at some long odds at the end that might be in the running late in the contest, but of course it was Royal Prestige and Express Ride, the one that most of the folks are putting their money on tonight, and with good reasons, as we've seen the way everything developed coming into the stretch. Some tough luck for Håkan Wallner, but a nice race for Express Ride. Had some problems early and recovered real well, and as John Campbell said, that is rare sometimes with a 2-year-old trotter, but he was impressive tonight. Sharon?
Well, thank you, Kenny and Stan. We did see some impressive 2-year-old trotting colts tonight, but how about 2-year-old pacing fillies for next week? This is something we really got to encourage people to see.
Well, they're great wins. We have Follow My Star and Caressable and Valentina and Razzle Hanover, a new world record holder, all meeting. As far as tonight's race is concerned, Sharon, I want to say two things. The Irony of Royal Prestige showed no breaks, no gate breaks at all on his program card. Made one tonight that was costly, and the ability, incredible ability of John Campbell. We saw him win 2 weeks ago with Sandy Bowl when that horse went off stride briefly and Campbell got him back. And while he gave proper credit tonight to this colt getting back quickly, it was partly his talent.
Okay, well, congratulations to all of them. Remember, next week, 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time, the 2-year-old filly pace in the Breeders' Crown Series. That is next week, live from Yonkers, 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Friday, 2-year-old pacing fillies. That is it from the Meadows in Pennsylvania. The Breeders' Crown has been brought to you by Hanover Shoe Farms. Tomorrow's champions are at Hanover Shoe Farms. And by U.S. Air, with service to over 100 cities across the U.S. and Canada. For Stan Burstein and Kenny Rice, I'm Sharon Smith. We thank you for joining us from the Meadows in Pennsylvania.